Conversations you can share forward. Arrow.net, ARROE.net. All right, let's pod crash. Pod crashing episode number 150 is with Jeff Heimbuch from the podcast Maxmell.
What an introduction. I'm not going to lie. You are very it's like 6:30 in the morning for me still, so I'm a little tired. That woke me up. Thank you.
Oh, you must be on the West Coast then? You in California then?
I am indeed.
Oh. Yeah, you go ahead and tell Arrow how warm it is over by you.
Oh my God, it's supposed to be like 79 degrees today. I cannot wait.
Well, come on down to the Carolinas where we're going to have like maybe 49 today.
I grew up in New Jersey, so I get it.
Arrow, it's 18 over here right now, my friend.
No, you keep it. I don't want it.
I'll take the 49.
Thanks, buddy.
Jeff, man, you have done something here that I've waited so long for this kind of art to come to podcasting, because I first started in 2012 doing it, and it was like, man, theater of the mind is where it's at. Theater of the mind, and you really bring it to life.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, I can't take credit for it. I mean, tons of people have done it before me, especially the last couple of years. But thank you for the compliments.
but they don't do it like you're doing it. That's the part that I mean, you really do take me into the storyline and you take me away from this pandemic and put me in a different place.
Damn, thank you. I appreciate that.
To get there, though, it involves a lot of writing, and it involves a lot of relinquishing your writing to actors who bring that story forward.
Yes, very, very much so. You definitely have to trust those actors and actresses to make it happen. And I mean, we fully trusted ours, and it worked out nicely for us.
What was it like to go through that acting process? Because, first of all, I think this is such a golden age for all levels of acting, be it television, be it movies, and even be it podcasting. This is an actor's world right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially because of COVID and a lot of people, you can't get together with people to see shows and all this stuff. You have to get creative in some ways. And I feel like that's really honing a lot of these actors' crafts to, act in non-traditional ways that they're not used to anymore. And I think that really translates well into all forms of entertainment at this point.
So how did Magmell actually start? Because a seed creates the tree creates the paper, you write, and now it's on a podcast. I mean, that transition and that growth, where did it come from?
As a kid, I always really enjoyed space travel. Nice. And I've always really wanted to write some kind of space-related story. I didn't really care what it was. But, over the years, I'm a big horror fan as well. So for whatever reason, I had an image in my head of this astronaut exploring an abandoned spaceship out in the deep reaches of space. And it's just always stuck with me. And that eventually turned into what Magmell is today. I mean, it's a very small part of the Magmell story, but that is what the first seed of Magmell was. And I was just trying to figure out what the story beats were. And, I was kind of plotting it out with my friend Lindsay, and we just decided, maybe we should write this together. Maybe we should make this an actual thing. And that's just how it came about. So now,
but to turn it into a podcast, because, I mean, you come on, podcasters. They'll sit there and say, well, I don't know what I'm going to podcast about. It sounds like you've had a vision from day one of what you wanted to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is not my first audio drama. I've done many before this, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. But I think I've gotten to that point now when we're crafting these stories that, as we're writing it, I can kind of, not visually, audio only, plot out in my head what certain things are going to sound like, what I want them to sound like. And that just kind of makes it a little bit easier for me when I'm writing, because I have that experience now.
That's interesting that you break it down like that. I call that defragging, being able to take an idea and breaking it down and try this. Did it work? Did it work?
Yeah. And, a lot of times at the start of this, it did not work. But I feel like it's definitely gotten much better over the years, for me, at least.
Well, in every story, there's always got to be conflict. But what I love about the USS Magmell is the fact that, yes, there's conflict, but these guys better work together, because it's all about survival now. You're not on planet Earth.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one of the big things we try to do when we're writing a story. Yes, this is a science fiction story. Yes, they're stuck 7 million light years from home. That is the main plot. But at the end of the day, the characters themselves have to be believable. They have to have something between them that makes them believable. And without that, it like kind of falls flat. So we always try to add those extra dimensions to the characters, especially because you can't see them. You can't see how they're expressing themselves. You can't see what they're doing. So we kind of have to go above and beyond to make sure those character traits shine through.
So now when you go through those traits and those changes and stuff like that, I always call those wine glass moments. Do you do that in a way where you're going, okay, it sounds good, but I need it to be great. Here, let me have a sip of wine. I'm going to take a chance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not necessarily wine, but yes, indeed. Something like that happens.
Yeah, because you've got to silence that beast that's on the inside, that little perfectionist and stuff like that. Because when you put your art out here, see, the thing is, Jeff, we're going to know you for these shows. And the next time that your next podcast, your next adventure, we're going to go, damn straight, when I was in Magmell, this is how I felt. I see his name. I have to listen to it.
I certainly hope that's the effect I have on people, because I want them to continue hearing these shows. Like, it's wonderful that they want to hear these stories.
You're not afraid to show emotion in this series. I mean, I love the way that these voice actors really come in there, and it sounds like I'm sitting right there with them.
Yeah, I think that's part of like my working with a lot of these actors before, and like knowing what they're capable of and them knowing what I'm kind of looking for. I think that's really helpful and able to get to those emotions that we need them to portray. And again, you can't see them, so they have to go a little above how they actually are to make sure it's properly heard just through audio.
Now, Julia Cameron says you've got to learn how to paint the walls. I mean, how did you learn that art where it was like you were going to bring that room into my imagination?
A lot of practice.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of practice. I started out like doing a show on my own called Return Home like 7-8 years ago. And it was just me doing it on my own, with a few people. And it was a lot of trial and error. And, getting to this point now where Magmell sounds like it could be almost like a Hollywood production in a way without a Hollywood budget. Like, it just took a lot of time and work to get there. And, I just kept at it, and I'm really proud of how it sounds.
So movies aren't filmed in sequence. What about your podcast? Are you going in there and getting pieces, parts, and then you've got somebody who's going to glue it all together?
This is actually the most unique experience for a audio podcast recording I've ever had, because this is the first one that everyone was in the same room together, and B, we actually recorded it in chronological order.
Wow.
Like, that has never happened to me before. It's usually like one person at a time, and I have to piecemeal it all together. So I definitely think them being in the room together, of course, allowed them to play off of each other's emotions much better as well. And I think, obviously, the show is better for it.
Well, you're so right about that, because I've talked with members of The Simpsons and stuff like that, and they've always said they like it better when they can see each other's true emotions. And even though they are in character, they still have to be able to play off that.
Yeah. And you can feed off of somebody else's emotions quite easily when they're right there in front of you. But it's not the same thing when you just hear them over the headphones and you're responding to them because they had recorded 4 days before you.
Now, creatively speaking, we're in this new age of podcasting. Even Mark Maron will tell you that he was not a pioneer, but it's still a new age because people are just discovering it. Do you feel like that we have been reincarnated in a way that the beginning days of radio, the beginning days of podcasting, we're living a moment here?
Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of funny, there's been all these articles recently about certain people like being the new pioneers and like bringing these art forms to podcasting and stuff. But, it's been around for ages, since the 20s, since the 30s. It's not new. People are just rediscovering it again and doing new things with it. So it's great to be part of that renaissance, quite honestly.
What is it like for you to have other people use your words, though? Because, so many times, it's like, the inflection, how that you heard it inside your head. And then when somebody else is using it, it's like, oh, yeah.
I mean, at first it was years ago, a very weird experience for me, because again, like you said, I'm just used to hearing those words myself, especially in my head. But now I've gotten to that point where, yes, I'm putting the words on paper, but they're the ones that are going to bring it to life. And they're the actor. I'm not the actor. Like, they're much better at it than I am. So if they make a choice that I might not necessarily agree with, 9 times out of 10 when I'm listening to it later, I'm like, no, they made the right choice. That was the way to go. So I'm totally okay with it now. Please play with the words the way you want. I'm sure it's going to work out.
Speaking of choices, are you inside that studio when they're putting in the sound effects and things like that? Because you're spot on. You don't sound like Star Wars. You don't sound like anything else. You've got your own identity with this.
Yeah, so all of those sound effects was that was all done by me, like much later on after the recording when I was editing it. And a lot of the stuff, I had in my own personal library, but there was some stuff that like I had to create myself, just like the old school radio dramas used to do. So it's a lot like usually I'll listen to like the edits and I'm like, it's missing a sound here. What do I need? And I try to figure it out that way. It's again, a lot of trial and error trying to figure that out. Also, what's too much, what is not enough, just finding that perfect balance of audio.
So you are doing the editing then?
Yes. Yeah.
See, I dig that about you. That means you're getting your hands dirty. This isn't something that you just, I have an idea, I'm going to write it, I'm going to throw it into somebody else's heart.
Oh no, it's literally the only aspect of the process that I don't have my hands in is the music composition. But that's because my friend Corey Celeste, who has been writing my music for years, she's so good at it and she knows exactly what I'm looking for that like I don't even have to worry about that. So but everything else I have my fingers in, for better or for worse.
Each podcast, do you have a time limit that you have to hit? Because I mean, I'm one of those people that go, if I go over 20, then that means that they've already been to the store. Will they be the same person when they get back into the car?
Oh my God. It's funny you say that because even before I started making drama podcasts, when I was doing regular podcasting, my limit was always 20 minutes because I wanted to be like a commute podcast they can listen to on their way to work and be done and not have to worry about it. The same thing kind of goes here. The episodes are all like 25 to 35 minutes long. We try to keep them short and sweet. That way you can listen all in one drive. But that's really what I aim for because I don't want people to have to come back and listen to it later. I want them to get the full breadth of the episode right then and there. Yeah,
because I mean, I always want to tap into the writing side of it and to really hear what's being shared. And if I'm rush listening, I'm not grasping the entire story.
Yeah, exactly. If you get to work and you still have 5 minutes left, you're like, come on, hurry up. I got to go inside.
Now, one of the things that I really love, and I need to know how you came to this decision, is that you put real street speak in here. You're not afraid to use those F-bombs and things like that. And when I first started experiencing it, I'm going, okay. But as that writer and as that performer, when did you give yourself permission to do that?
Probably a couple of years ago when I realized it wasn't that big of a deal anymore, quite honestly. But in this case specifically, you're talking about Jana. Jana drops the F-bomb all the time. But to me, that makes her a real person. Yeah. I know people like Jana. I know their personality. I know how they talk. And that to me lends a little bit of an authenticity to the character because people I know talk that way. So why wouldn't somebody even up in space still be talking that way? She may be foul-mouthed, but like she's a smart woman. She knows her stuff. She knows what she's doing. So like let her talk however she wants.
I'm so glad you said that because I talked with the gentleman who created the podcast magazine and I talked to him about that, about using the F-bombs and things like that. And he says, I hope they never tell us to do it because you've taken away my freedom of speech.
I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how to respond to that. Quite honestly. Like, this is how people talk, though. Like, I don't know why it's such like a weird thing for others. Like, I don't know. Not everyone's going to talk prim and proper on any entertainment program. So I think it's very important to have real like people on these types of shows because then you can relate to them. I'm from the East Coast. We grew up cursing all the time. So this is just part of my personality.
I'm from Montana. When we were out there on those fields feeding those cattle at 5 o'clock in the morning, dude, we were not sitting there saying, gee, golly, wow.
I would not be saying that either.
You are a writer, and that means that I have to ask you a writer question. And as that writer inside of you, is it screaming to be heard through other people? In other words, it wants to find a voice, and it's going to go wherever it can to always find a voice.
Yeah, I think at this point in my life, yes. I think when I was a child, it was enough for me to just get the words down on paper and then I was fine with it. But as I'm growing older, now I'm like, now I want to get these stories out there and have other people say them, other people hear them, other people listen to them. So yeah, it's very important to me.
What is the goal for Magmell? Are we going to turn this into a long-term series and stuff like that to where we can always just keep jumping into the characters? Because I hated it when all of these Star Wars movies would come to an end. I don't like that kind of stuff. I want it to be with me at all times.
For all of these shows that I do try to make them self-contained. There is a beginning, there's a middle, and an end. However, there's always that like little thing that I can't help myself that I always add at the last second. that leaves the door open to possibilities for more at the end of the day. So there is always that opportunity. I guess it depends on how well this season does if we come back. But we, my co-writer and I, Lindsay, have been thinking about other possible sequel ideas if the opportunity arises. So it is a possibility.
All right, Mr. Writer-Editor. Now I'm going to go real deep here, and other podcasters may understand this, but I know authors will. Do you go through a mourning period when you conclude on a show? Because, all of a sudden those characters are no longer part of you.
It's like you're looking into my brain. How do you know that? Yes. When I handed this off, the final product, it was like, I don't know, it was like sending your child off to college and then you're not seeing them again for a while. So like at first I was fine. And then I was like, oh man, I really miss these characters. I wonder what they're up to, what they're doing. And even now as the show's like re-airing for people, I'm listening along as well. And it's like almost hearing it again for the first time because, I had kind of forgotten about a lot of the story beats, but it's like listening to old friends again now that they're back in my life. And I really love that they're back.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing that I teach when I go to universities and I teach podcasting as well as broadcasting. And I always tell them, you've got to go in there and listen to it as a real person in your car. How are you going to make the next one better than what you just did?
Yeah, exactly. And especially now in the days of like, advertising and podcasts and everything too. I'm always thinking like, how can I help integrate the ads so it's not as jarring at the end of the day to the listener versus, it just coming out of nowhere like a normal commercial. So there's always things to be learned by actually experiencing it as an audience member as well. Podcasting
is a business, so let's go that direction for a few seconds. When you talk about advertising and stuff like that, I realize that a lot of podcasters like to jump in there and get the advertising, but that darn mid-roll, that commercial in the middle, when did you decide that it's like, okay, we can do that, but it better be in the right place?
I mean, when I'm writing the scripts, and especially this one, when I wrote it with my friend Lindsay Scoggin, like we were very specifically trying to design story beats that were set up with like commercial breaks, essentially. So at the end of every act of an episode, like there is, I don't know, something that makes you want to come back and listen through the commercials to continue listening to the story. I always try to employ that when I know there's going to be ad breaks, because I don't want somebody to get to an ad and be annoyed and stop listening to the show. And I get it. Ads can be annoying, but they also help pay for this content too. So like you have to deal with it.
Well, absolutely. And that's what I love about as podcasting has grown and stuff like that, is that listeners are willing to sit through it as long as they know inside their heart there's something on the other side as a payoff.
Yes, you got to make sure you have that payoff every single time. And that's what we try to do. Every time the show comes back from an ad break, there's some kind of little payoff, as big or as little as it may be, just to make sure they're satisfied with it.
There are so many people that will start a podcast. I always call it the unlucky 7. They'll go 7 deep and then they quit, but yet they still want a podcast. How did you get beyond the 7th show in order to say, I think this is going to be the way of life?
I think that just came from me doing it in the past and like realizing like if I really want to make a thing out of this, I just have to keep at it. Because you're right, there's so many people that start doing it and then it just falls to the wayside because they're not getting what they want right off the bat. And that's never going to happen. You have to keep at it and work at it to build that audience up. And I feel like I've kind of gotten to that point where I feel good about continuing on after that 7th episode because I know the content is good and I know people are going to listen to it. When you walk into that studio and you're not in the mood, is there a mantra that you tell yourself that no matter, I don't care what kind of a mood you're in, we've got to reach people? It's usually me taking a moment in the corner and going like, saying something stupid like, I don't know, we got to make this magic happen or something like that. Just like kind of giving myself a pep talk because, there are times I walk in and I'm like, there was a day on Magmell where I wasn't feeling great. I didn't sleep well and I had to drive to LA to get to the studio and I was in a foul mood. But then like hearing these people say these words, it kind of like re-energized me again. Yep. Like, okay, they're helping me tell my story. Like, get out of this bad mood. You got this.
All right, you passed the test. That means you're a podcaster. You'll get your certificate in the mail.
Oh, perfect. I can't wait.
Dude, you got to come back to this show in the future, man. Man, the door is always going to be open for you.
I would love that. I love this conversation.
Well, you
get it. That's what made it better.
I live it, dude. This is my life. I mean, I gave up terrestrial radio to do this.
That's amazing.
So to get an opportunity to talk to somebody like you, it's like, oh my God, he totally gets it too.
Yeah. So it's very nice to like speak to someone who understands and is very like-minded because not a lot of other people understand this kind of thing at all. So it's great that you understand the ins and outs of it.
It's our language, dude. Oh, you could put that in a future episode. What's your language, man? I speak podcast.
I speak podcast.
You be brilliant today, okay, Jeff?
Thank you. You as well. Thank you.